A minute of silence for those who perished in the recent earthquake in Sichuan. In spite of the tragedy, the relay of the Olympic torch continued through the Chinese provinces, though ceremonies along the way will be simplified, and as was the case last Wednesday in the province of Jiangxi, a minute of silence will be observed each day in remembrance of the tens of thousands of victims of the quake. Hello and thank you for joining us on the road to Beijing. The controversy surrounding Tibet has been overshadowed of late by the tragedy of the quake. Jacques Roche, the IOC chairman, underscored the support of the Olympic community this week.
We have decided to donate $1 million to the organizing committee, who will then use it for the relief of the victims. It will be a humanitarian support. This is not a support for the organization of the Games. This will go to the people who have been affected.
Yet training continues and the stakes are high for every country, especially China, who counts on the Games to showcase the talent of its athletes. In a bid to win the maximum number of medals, the Chinese have even engaged foreign trainers. An example, French fencing master Christian Bauer.
It might not be a sport normally associated with China, but the host nation's fencing team is one of its best chances for Olympic gold. Tan Shui currently tops the women's world ranking in the sabre discipline, but coping with the expectations of Olympic success on home soil is one of the toughest challenges for China's competitors.
For athletes, the biggest dream is the Olympics, and this time it's at our doorstep, so it's a great opportunity. But we need to adjust mentally for the competition.
Mental training is something China's sabre coach Christian Bauer has focused on since taking over 2 years ago. One of the first things the Frenchman did was give his team a holiday, fearful they had burnt out from overtraining. Even though Bauer needs an interpreter to communicate with his athletes, the team has warmed to his approach.
I
think he's an excellent coach, very different from Chinese coaches who tend to emphasize long hours of training. He focuses more on ideology and thinking.
Motivational messages hang from the training room's walls. It's part of what Bauer likes to call his iron fist in a velvet glove tactic in coaching: be firm but understanding.
Training is to be pleasant. They have to enjoy it. At the beginning, officials told me the athletes are laughing during training sessions, so they can't be working. I had to explain to them we can work and have fun at the same time.
And it's a strategy that's paying off. Some are tipping China to win at least 4 fencing medals at the Beijing Games.
But the exercise has ended abruptly for some, as it did for French trainer Gaëtan Le Brigand, formerly in charge of women's basketball team. Our sports correspondent in Beijing met with him.
4 years of devotion coaching the Chinese women's basketball team. And it all came to an end with this email, sent while he was away on vacation. That's what happened to Gaëtan Le Brigand.
I was thanked by people from the highest echelons of the sports ministry.
Fired by email?
Fired by email announcement. No meeting beforehand, as if we were parting on the best of terms.
The Frenchman has remained in Beijing, where he's preparing his defense. With his daughter Clara and his wife Ping at his side, he's accusing the Chinese Basketball Federation of not respecting his contract. After the latest Asia Games, the press gave him the credit for the success of the women's team. Now he's not ready to leave without a fight.
We received phone calls, harassing ones, from the interpreter who works the women's team, who went so far as insulting my wife 3 times in a single day. She said, "Go home. China no longer needs you. It's no longer your country," using words so vulgar that I daren't repeat them.
When it came to answering our questions, the Federation remained silent. Le Brigand is not the only foreign coach to have been fired suddenly and without explanation. The Chinese Sports Ministry recruited a total of 70 coaches abroad to help train Chinese athletes for the Beijing Games. But 30 of them have suffered the same fate as Le Brigand, getting a pink slip in the final lead-up to the Games. Le Brigand doesn't yet know if his case stands a chance. All he knows is that he'll be watching the Games not from the sidelines, but from here, his living room.
Joining us today is correspondent Luc Richard, author of the book Beijing 2008. Hello, Luc. One feels the enormous pressure on Chinese athletes to win the maximum of medals during these Games.
Yes, and this pressure is also political. I'll give you one single example, that of Yao Ming, who I researched for the purposes of my book. Yao Ming, it's a name which won't mean much to you, but everybody's seen the photos of this giant who is 7 meters tall. He's a basketball player and who is known in the NBA in the United States, also well known in China. Yao Ming is the product of eugenics in the Chinese sporting system, because the Chinese Communist Party got his mother a basketball champion, 6'3" tall, got a tall basketball China player, and compelled them to create a baby. And from a very young age, he was obliged to train intensively as a basketball player.
This example has been reproduced in other sports.
We know that at that time that eugenics was used for the purposes of selection.
And you allude to the example, the parallel with GDR of the worst period, this Eastern Germany, where swimmers were drugged or doped against their will.
Absolutely. What seems to me to be interesting is that China today is still a communist country, and that the Chinese sports system is specific to this country. If you want to make a comparison, you can make it with the Soviet Union and with Eastern Germany, the GDR, in the way athletes were selected and trained, and the fact that political ideology governs sport.
Will this bear fruit next August in Beijing?
I think there are major risks, particularly concerning when you set very high political objectives, which are extremely lofty for trainers and athletes, and the ground level real situation is not at the same level. There you have risks, and the risk of doping and performance drugs, because you have to bridge the division between sport and ideology. There may be some abuses with athletes doping themselves.
What you alluded to is in contradiction with the Olympic Charter.
Yes, there are contradictions with the Olympic Charter. There was the case of Yao Ming, of course. There are other examples in my book, athletes who were sidelined from the Olympics on the basis of religious and political criteria, which is a breach of the Olympic Charter. And on this type of breach, it would be very good to hear what Jacques Rocher.
Luc Richard, thank you for being with us. And it brings us to the end of this program. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week for the next leg of On the Road to Beijing on France 24.